For me, anytime that I'm playing, it's all about trying to take some emotion or some words or something I'm thinking about and expressing it through music. I'm improvising off of maybe just a chord that I heard that I really, really like and that I want to explore more of. A lot of the times when I'm writing for film or for TV or for any media that there's something else that the audience needs to be paying attention to, my job is to express the same things, but to express it in a way that allows the audience to get attached not to my music, but to whatever the character is. So my job is just to take words and express them as music. Hi, I'm Gabriel John Griswold, and I wrote the music for Youth Climate Corps BC. There was so much in the movie, especially when I saw the first cuts, that was absolutely gorgeous. The overhead shots, you know, this flying through nature, as well as the really, really personal conversations that were being had with some of the people in it. I watched it and I couldn't not feel attached to it. And in, you know, hearing what Arian wanted in terms of the sound world and the meaningfulness of a lot of what was being said, I immediately understood that there was a deep, really deep personal connection to it. That really inspires me to step up and say, okay, I need to make this music what it is. I need to make something that really represents the world being contained in this story. And so for me, it was just a mixture of a beautiful, beautiful film mixed with a deep, deep personal intention that convinced me I really need to work on this, and immediately I was drawn to working on it. One of the very first things that I ever wrote for the movie was something that happens right at the very, very beginning, which kind of has this scene of, you know, they're on this news show, they're talking, and then there's a beautiful overhead shot through nature, and it kind of brought us to this garden. And this isn't even how the movie ended up. This wasn't the cut. But I needed something to kind of be grand and be beautiful, but that also felt very intimate, like this news section. And I remember playing like just these two notes, and it was kind of like a rainy, dark day, like the first time that I got one of this. It just wasn't a very beautiful day. But this kind of, it lifted me up a little bit. So I just kind of got stuck into that pattern, and I ended up coming up with just this one solo piano line. Something very, very simple, and it's just constantly repeating things like this. It allows people to have a conversation and have something impactful over it. And later I added all sorts of, you know, there's some strings that happen beneath it. You know, you get this growth, a little bit of something. And I thought, okay, well, now I have no idea how to get into this. This is the start of this big movie, and so I ended up adding, you know, some strings right at the very beginning, in a little bit of a darker space. So if we listen to those strings, just very sustained.
I remember having really clear summers my whole life here, running around the park that's behind us, and like even today it's smoky.
Very, very dark energy, kind of dark colors, letting her talk, something kind of foreboding. And those are just simple, very, very open chords, but that stay very dark. And so I kind of go through this process where I needed to figure out, okay, well, how do I go from to? And I ended up landing on some bass lines and things like that. But really the big thing about writing for movies is that you have to understand where you need to go, right? I have to understand, you know, does this line work for when they're having this conversation with people in the park? Yeah, I think it does. Where does it work? And I think right about here, when they're interviewing Shannon in this park, it kind of stops working a little bit.
That made me who I am today.
Right. So
Working this summer with Youth Climate Corps,
we're getting into this big conversation with a lot of the members of the Youth Climate Corps, right? There's 4 of them in a row. And I think we had talked about it all together and said, you know, this piano just doesn't feel right. We're getting into kind of why they do it, these motivations. And we had talked about having some synthesizers. And so I kept this kind of repeating pattern. And I said, okay, well, I can put that onto a synthesizer. And so eventually in an early version, we go from this piano, and then we have this kind of bassy,
that made me who I am today. Working this summer with you.
these kind of synth colors like that. And if we go to the final version of this, if we look at this, we have blue on the top as all of the piano parts. We have these purple parts are strings. We have these bass parts down here, and then all this down here is just some audio that I've recorded. So the synthesizers are down there and things like that. And we can see, if we look at the movie, right, we're still having this same conversation, but it gets a little bit more fuller, right? We're bringing in something like these high strings. We're bringing in a little bit more of that punchier synthesizer with some reverb coming in on the end. And if we listen to what they're talking about, it's very reflective, so that we can do what we want to do to make the world a better place. And you can see how when I started it, I was just struggling to write this transition. But you can get a little bit more introspective with the more layers of strings and with synthesizers as we kept on going. There's so much that you can learn just from listening to people and looking at people and looking at the surroundings that these people are in when something occurs. For this film in particular, it was looking at so much hope and so much care that these activists took in what they do. There's so many moments, such as those particularly at the end when we're looking at alumni and looking at organizers and people who have been around, that really draws me to their impact in the community and their impact on this story. So for me, it's all about those moments and saying, what is it about you that made your impact so special? And how can I, as a composer, help to bring that to the forefront of not only the documentary, but also the music? And when I'm working on film as a whole, it's how to connect people from different backgrounds. It's how to connect people from different languages and different cultures. Sound, I think, is one of the only things that really can touch a lot of people, right? You could listen to this movie with no text, right? You could listen to it without it, and you could kind of understand where it is because of what the music is trying to say. And I think that's one of the special things about music, and about music particularly in these circumstances. It's, as I've said, very, very holistic. Music is just a small part in this big story of a documentary, right? There's filmmakers making it, there's people who are telling the story, and there's people like me who only take part in it after all of those stories have been told. And so I think music's role is to just bring the audience closer to that. And I think if there's one thing that I want the audience to get from understanding what I did, it's that nothing can be done with just one person. It's people coming together to tell a story. It wasn't just me writing this, even if I was the only person here, working on these instruments and sitting there practicing. Everybody came together to make it, and I think that's really what they should come away from it. I think this film is very touching in that we're looking at people with a lot of time left. A lot of documentaries are looking back at something. And this documentary is so special because it looks at young people, and it looks at what they're doing to impact our world in a way that so few people are really stepping up to do. And I think it encourages change in a very special way. It encourages change in a very human way. And it encourages change in a way that I think forces the audience to reflect on where we are and what we need to do, and particularly what they can do to bring humanity towards kind of this common goal of ceasing this constant pollution, constant effects on climate change. The movie brings people together in the sense that we need to create positive change. It doesn't divide people. And that's, I think, what the beautiful part of this message is, and what this movie is to connect people to a movement and to connect people to positive and influential change in our world and really for our world as a whole.